All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Football Forecast Podcast, episode number 6. I'm your host, Austin Killough, along with my co host, Steve Killough.
Hey guys, what's going on?
And we are back on a beautiful Tuesday night. Not really too beautiful. We got a hurricane on the way, or a tropical storm, whichever it is, Dorian.
We'll survive.
Yeah, we'll survive. We'll ride it out. And yeah, so that's on the way. So it's not very beautiful. Today it is, but in a couple of days it's gonna be all hell's gonna break loose. But yeah, so back into the news, getting into the news for this week. So yeah, there was a lot that happened, and as we said last week, we were gonna have a lot to talk about today, especially regarding college football. And Saturday, I will just say this weekend was amazing. This is one of the best weekends we've had in a while because we actually saw a real college football game, the first actual real college football game since January.
Yes.
It was good. It felt like a really good competitive championship kind of game. It felt really good. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's going to be the first thing we talk about. Just in general, I think everybody was excited to see that. I think it really paid off, not for the fact that it was good football, because everybody knows that watched it. It was really bad. It was really sloppy football.
It was a sloppy game.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it, but it was an entertaining game. It was
Definitely,
good.
yeah.
It was competitive right down to the final play. Um, yeah, I mean, but considering it's the first game, nobody's going to come out right out of the first game and be playing their best football. Usually it takes teams a couple, 3, even 4 weeks to really kind of get to what you might call mid-season type form, where teams are really playing a lot better, a lot smoother football. So not unexpected. But if you look in depth at the Florida-Miami game, you can see some reasons why parts of the game went the way they did.
I think the biggest reason in general why it was so sloppy, like you said, it's the first game of the season. Not only that, but both of these teams, it's a neutral site. Both of these teams have to go to Orlando, Florida, where fans from any one of these teams, anywhere could be. There could be Florida, Miami fans, doesn't matter. Anybody could be there. It's a middle ground, and you're playing the first game of the year. So there's nothing to set the standard for or anything. You are literally just coming out of the gate and playing a football game like nothing's happened. Like you've been conditioning for this, but you haven't been conditioning to be the first one to play. So yeah, I mean, I would be pretty nervous too to be any one of those offensive teams dropping footballs and things like that. So,
If you look at Miami coming in, they were starting a brand new quarterback, a guy who I think had thrown 3 career college passes.
Actually, one was completed. He has only made one complete pass before the game,
but he had thrown crazy. 3 passes, completed 1. They were starting 2 new tackles. One was a true freshman, one was a redshirt freshman. They had a center making his first career start. And of course, that line gave up 10 sacks. And granted, Florida's defense is pretty good. They're not that good. Don't expect Florida's defense to go out and record 8, 9, 10 sacks a game. That's not going to happen. But they were playing against a very inexperienced line. But if you look at some of the stats, it was, like you said, it's a sloppy game. There were 5 total turnovers. Florida had 4 of them. Felipe Franks, Florida's quarterback, had 3 turnovers, 2 picks and a fumble. Fumble was deep in the red zone. Of course, like I said, there were 11 total sacks in the game. Florida had 10 of them. The 2 teams combined went 4 for 24 on third down conversions. That's not good. The 2 teams combined for 605 yards of total offense. Also not good. And there are also a total of 23 penalties in the game between the 2 teams for 218 yards. So both teams actually topped 100 yards in penalties. So, but the good thing is it's a non-conference game for both teams. Both teams, see the areas they have to work on to get better. What does this mean looking forward in the season for both teams? I think for Florida, I don't think it really changed a lot. Again, they're playing a decent opponent. It's the first game. I thought before the season started that Florida looked like probably about a 9-3 football team. So, in my opinion, that hasn't really changed. I would be worried though about the quarterback position. A lot of people were, I think, expecting more of Felipe Franks. They thought last season at the end of the year he was playing better. He had no turnovers in his last 4 games last season. People thought he had turned a corner as far as his quarterback development. But he looked he really had regressed this first game. So we'll have to see if that is an indication of things to come, or if that's just maybe a hiccup in his quarterback development, and maybe he comes back out in the next game and plays a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, that was in the news, all week, yeah, especially when you have one game to talk about. But yeah, Franks was in the news all week because of how controversial he was at the game. And for people that didn't watch it, he had 254 yards and 2 touchdowns. And so after each of those touchdowns, Franks would run to the audience, the people in the stands, and he would do a little chant, a little celebration type thing. And he's just kind of acting like a Baker Mayfield type of situation, right? But I think the thing people are mad because Felipe Franks is not putting up the stats as Baker Mayfield did, but he's going out there and doing the things Baker Mayfield did after the play. So yeah, you're kind of looking at a situation there where Felipe Franks isn't 100% justified to be kind of acting like that and acting kind of cocky. But I don't know. I see something else there in that situation, because I think the biggest thing for him is that he is not as much of a leader as Baker Mayfield was. Regardless, like we talked about that last week with the comments that Baker made about Daniel Jones, or that GQ twisted up to make it look bad about Daniel Jones. We talked about how Baker was just a really good leader all in all, regardless of how much of an ass he can be. He's a really good leader. He can get people riled up. I think Felipe Franks, even during the game, he was kind of away from his sideline. He was away from those guys, and that's probably a sign of how he is in the locker room and at training camp. He's probably only with his guys when he needs to be there. It doesn't look like he has a really strong relationship with really anybody on that team. So that's a big difference that I see. And it feels like that he wants to prove himself and just prove something to everyone, especially all those fans. And I think that's the biggest reason why he was acting like that, because to him it probably felt like he was playing in the swamp, and that he was doing these things and he was beating this team, and he was trying to prove himself to these people. And in his mind, he was doing it the right way. But to us, honestly, he didn't put up the stats that we would have liked to see for him to go out there and act like a titan, and things like that.
Yeah, even Dan Mullen pulled him aside during the game and told him to cool it with all the sideline antics. And this is the guy who who reportedly is big into social media, big on Twitter, has a lot of followers, responds to a lot of people, I guess, who like to either praise or criticize him, whichever way you want to put it. But to me, sometimes it was like he's out there just trying too hard and trying to prove something. He needs to just worry about going there and just trying to be the best quarterback he can be, and forget about all the other stuff. He'll probably be a lot better off.
And that's definitely the problem. It's just he needs to step up and be the leader that a quarterback should be. And he doesn't need to prove something to himself. He needs to prove something to the team, prove something to the school, prove something to his own coaches, and ultimately to himself, but not to the point where he has such a low standard for himself. He needs to improve and be one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC to be like that, and or even just be a great leader and be somebody the team loves to be around. So yeah, those kind of antics are really unwarranted for somebody with those stats, with a team you were likely to beat, and you beat them by less than the amount of points you were supposed to beat them by. I don't know if those actions are very normal or regular, but yeah, definitely I think in the future he's probably going to be told, and he'll learn that he has to be Florida's guy. Florida's quarterback and not his own guy. I think that's something we'll see. He's a very understandable guy from what we saw in the SEC interviews and things like that. So I think he will. I think he'll kind of adjust and see that hopefully, Florida fans hop on that Felipe bandwagon because I do feel like he's going to redeem himself eventually. This was the time to do it. He didn't really pull through, but I think as the season goes on, he might be able to pull something out and kind of do that.
Yeah, and I think too, if you're a Miami fan, I think you have to be so encouraged. They came out, they played like they had some deficiencies there, they had some issues, but I think you saw some encouraging signs. They definitely got. I think they got a good defense. I think they got a couple of good players on offense, and they'll just get better as the season goes along. They're breaking in some new guys, and they're going to have some growing pains. I think you have to be encouraged. I don't think Miami is. I don't forecast them to have a real good season. I think it's reasonable that they could win 7-8 games. We're probably not anything more than that. But I thought Florida would win the game. I didn't think it would be as close as it was. I think if Florida had played a cleaner game with less mistakes, it would have definitely been a wider margin as far as points. But it ended up the way I expected it would. One thing I want to mention too that I thought was interesting, I saw on the news where they like to on some of these bigger games, particularly a game like this at Showcase where there's no other games that they were competing with. They mentioned what television market had the highest viewership of that game. And you would think that the highest television market as far as viewership would be one of the main media areas of Florida, meaning either Miami, Tampa, Orlando, or maybe even Jacksonville, somewhere like that. So where do you think, what television market you think had the highest rated viewership?
Market?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be Miami? Like Miami-Dade County?
You would think it would be, but actually the number one television viewership market for that game was actually in Birmingham, Alabama.
Well, I can think of a few reasons for that. Number one is that Birmingham probably has I know Birmingham's really popular, so yeah, I know it's the biggest city in Alabama, so they probably have a lot of people per capita. And also, every single one of those people love football, and there's not one exception. So I think they were ready for some SEC football.
Football is huge in Alabama, and they don't call Birmingham the football capital of the South for nothing. It got that nickname for a reason. So
definitely, I think more people need to know about that stat because it wasn't even their own team. It was an SEC team in that fact, and they still have the biggest market in the nation for that game. So that's really crazy. I think more people need to look at that and say like, wow, people in Alabama really love football. That's true. So like a couple more things to take away from that game on Saturday is the biggest thing I saw, the most interesting, the funnest thing to me was Florida special teams. Florida special teams played as good as I've ever seen special teams play in my life. They were on target with everything. The first time we saw special teams, the first special teams unit, punter Tommy Townsend pulled one through on a 4th and 3, faked the punt for a first down run. So that was the first time we saw the special teams unit, and that was crazy. We didn't expect to see, a kind of a fake punt where a dude would run, a 4-second 40-yard dash right through, Miami's defense there. That was insane. That guy looked, like a straight up beast. So that's definitely, the future of Florida punting. That's what you're going to be seeing. Right after that, it immediately set up for that first touchdown of the real college football season to Kadarius Toney, who shifted up the sideline for a score.
That ended up being a huge call. And, of course, that play where Kadarius Toney went and scored a touchdown also highlighted another issue both teams had in the game, and that was poor tackling.
Yes, that was a big thing we should have talked about at the beginning. Yes, the tackling was terrible this game. That was the thing we were saying the entire game when we were watching it. This tackling was, insane. Like, if you guys are able to right now, just go watch that first touchdown, Kadarius Toney's touchdown. Go watch it. You will see he shifts through 3 Miami defenders, and that's just how many that he shifts through. But he shifts through one, then he shifts through another one where one guy is coming into contact with another guy. They're both coming for Toney, and they hit each other, and he just shifts right through and runs up the field. And then he runs through a couple other guys at the top that he shifts right through. So Miami tackling was bad. Florida tackling was bad. Everybody's tackling at the game was bad. But I think, we kind of covered that at the beginning, that it was just kind of, first game jitters and kind of, that's what you're going to expect to see in a game like that and in the first game of the season. And so I think that's what we have to chop it up to. Hopefully that's the reason, because if not, we're going to be seeing a lot of, broken plays and things like that.
The first game or two of the season, you're going to see a lot of teams have issues with things like that. Issues with tackling, issues with pass protection, issues with turnovers, penalties. And usually at the first couple of weeks, a lot of those things, a lot of teams usually end up getting those issues, particularly the better teams, get those issues sorted out. So
definitely, I think that's going to be a point that both teams are going to work on. I think Manny Diaz is probably going to drill that one. Everybody said that tackling needs to be a lot better. Dan Mullen's going to do the same. And also on that special teams remark, so Van Jefferson, a Florida player, also ran to bring in a broken punt at the Miami 11. On special teams as well, which the Gators scored off of 3 plays later. So they were able to set their dudes up twice to score, in a situation where we didn't think special teams would be very important. I think Florida was, what were they, 3 for 3 in field goals, I believe? I think that was the score. I think it was 3 for 3. And, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was correct. 3 for 3.
I'm not sure. I know it was either 2 for 2 or 3 for 3. I forget.
Oh well, 2 or 2, 3 for 3. Regardless, made all their field goals. Had a broken punt, muffed at the 11, got it, and set it up to score 3 plays later. And then you also had the first down run from 4th and 3, fake punt by Tommy Townsend. So special teams for Florida, that's something that I would be looking forward to marketing right now, because we all talk about how their defense is going to be pretty crazy for the SEC. It's going to be a pretty decent defense, and we did see a lot of that. 10 sacks. Obviously, you're not going to see that every season because Miami's offensive line was absolutely terrible that game, but definitely special teams is something Florida fans can pride themselves on right now. Special teams is very important. You saw it there. Florida didn't have those special teams. With the mistakes they made that game, Florida would have lost that game for sure. They had 2 different breaks where the special teams bailed them out. So that's something you should look forward to seeing as a Florida fan. The special teams, seeing how they progress, seeing what they do. They got a lot of athletic, explosive guys, is Florida's thing now. Florida is notoriously, and SEC teams in general are notoriously bigger and more physical. I think something out of Florida that we're seeing right now is the guys that are really, really speedy, really athletic and explosive, like Kadarius Toney. I mean, that guy was, he's insanely fast, and shifty, and all kinds of things. So, yeah, Florida special teams and offense, those guys are looking very, very spectacular, very shiny and slick on that field. And, I can't wait to see more Florida football, honestly. That's going to be a really great team in the SEC to watch. I'm really looking forward to, just seeing how they progress from that win. That was a tough win for them. Yeah. So, definitely. So, yeah. I don't know if you had anything to add about the Florida game. No, okay.
Well, we pretty much covered it. It's a good game to start the season. Of course, we've got an abbreviated schedule coming up on Thursday, which is kind of the official kickoff
week
of the college football season. This is what we would call week 1, we got some good matchups, some good games coming on there. The most visible game is going to be, of course, Georgia Tech playing at number 1 Clemson, start the season in Death Valley. And, of course, people are going to want to see how Clemson looks, particularly after having to replace some really good players that went on to the NFL, particularly their defensive line.
Their entire defensive line.
Yeah, the entire defensive line. So people are going to want to see what that looks like. Want to see how Trevor Lawrence looks, obviously, but that's a game that Clemson really should win easily. Georgia Tech, a team that's down talent-wise. They got a new head coach this year. Also, they're going to be converting their offense from the triple option offense they've been running for several years to more of a conventional style offense. And those, and of course, when you make that kind of transition, then of course you've got to start recruiting players that can run that type of offense. So I don't think you can really probably expect a whole lot from Georgia Tech this year, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. Clemson comes in as a 36.5-point favorite. I don't think they'll have any problem covering that. So I would look for them to win big. But you got some other good games as well. One game, as far as your ranked teams, you got Florida Atlantic playing at Central Florida. Central Florida ranked 17th. Again, that's a game. Of course, a lot of these, first couple 3 weeks season, you're gonna see a lot of mismatches. You see a lot of ranked teams playing lesser competition, such as this. So, this gonna be this is gonna be kind of an underlying theme for at least the first couple 3 weeks of the season. It almost always is. But that's a game Central Florida should win easily. You got Texas State playing at Texas A&M that evening as well. And again, that's a game that Texas A&M should win easily. I think they're a 34-point favorite, and I don't see any problem with them covering that. There should be also, excuse me, there should be a couple of really good competitive games on that night. I think one is going to be UCLA traveling to play at Cincinnati, Chip Kelly's team. Be interesting to see how much better they might be in year 2 of his regime at UCLA. I think Cincinnati, it looks like they're a slight favorite, about 2.5 points. But I think that's going to be a real competitive game. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see UCLA win that. I think you'll probably see a lot better offense from them this year. Last year they were breaking a new quarterback, a lot of other new position players. So this year they have a lot more experience. Cincinnati's a slight favorite, 2.5 points. I think UCLA probably wins that. And then also a team that a lot of people are picking as a sleeper this year, including myself, is Utah, which is coming to season ranked 14th. They're playing at BYU, which is a rivalry game. It's always a good game. Probably will see a lot of points scored in that one. Utah looks like they're about a 6-point favorite in that game, and I think they'll win that. And I think as far as even the national scene, as far as the college football playoff, I think that's a team to keep an eye on. I don't necessarily think that they'll make the playoff, but I think going at least all the way up through late November to the end of the season, I think they're a team that's going to be in the discussion for it. I wouldn't be surprised to see them win the Pac-12, and I think they're going to be on track for a very good year. You have some other games on that evening as well, but those are kind of the highlight games, the ranked teams, and including the games that are probably going to be the most competitive. A lot of the other games you see are really going to be mismatches, and of course we can't sit here and mention every game on the podcast. Friday.
Definitely some. No, I was just gonna say, but definitely like some good ones, regardless of how many are truly competitive. Because I really think the only one that's truly competitive will be Auburn and Oregon. But as for the rest, I mean, there are some good games that we all want to see. The ones that teams where they prove themselves, things like that. So yeah, it's gonna be a good week for football, definitely for any football fan. I mean, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. And after this first week, really going to find out a lot about teams and kind of get an idea of how they look, if this team's going to be good or if they may appear to be underrated or overrated or whatever the case may be. There are some teams you may have to watch play several weeks where you can make that determination based on the level of their competition. But at least this week we'll have some idea
solid
about
ground,
what we're looking at from a lot of these schools. But that's games we're kicking off with Thursday. You got a few more on Friday. One game that's really notable on Friday is number 19 Wisconsin is going to be traveling to play South Florida right here in Tampa.
All the way down here, okay.
Yeah. Wisconsin is a 12-point favorite going into that game. They'll probably I would think that they would probably win that game, but I think that's going to be a close game.
USF, even watching their training camp is looking a lot better than the things that we saw last year from them. I think one thing they're doing there, in general, you know how at the beginning of this we talked about like rebranding and the culture and everything. That's kind of what they're doing at USF because they really haven't been relevant for a long time. But what they're doing now is kind of like UAB a little bit is who they remind me of. They went through a little bit of a rebranding phase, but now they're doing theirs now. New uniforms, new logo, all kinds of things like that. And I don't know much about their coaching situation, but regardless from what I've seen from training camp, they're looking to have a pretty decent linebacker core for the for their kind of tier of a team. You have tiers like Alabama, and then you have your Floridas and things like that. And then you have your guys like your Utahs and your Wisconsin, places like that. And so USF, I would probably put down there somewhere towards the bottom. They never really get in. You never really see them in the top of the rankings or really anywhere in the rankings. But they're definitely a team that I could see kind of slip in there maybe this year. I mean, I guess we'll have to watch that game and find out and see what the point differential is. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. That's going to be cool.
Yeah, I think that'll be kind of a high-scoring game. South Florida is a team last year that got off to a really good start. 6-0, 7-0, I forget, but then they turned around and lost, I think, their last 5 or 6 games of the season. So they finished the season poorly. But I believe they got Blake Barnett coming back as quarterback. And so they'll have a decent team. I mean, I think that'll be a good competitive game. Charlie Strong is coming back. I think he's starting his 3rd season as a coach at South Florida. Again, Wisconsin, has a strong running game, strong offensive line. They usually have a pretty solid defense. I think they win that game, but I think that's going to be a relatively close game. I think Wisconsin probably just wins that by single digits.
Yeah, I could see that, definitely. I could see USF kind of slipping through the point differential there and kind of scoring more than they're predicted to or something. That'll be interesting to watch Friday, definitely.
And you got some other games on that day as well. Looking at Saturday, we got some good games. Of course, the highlighted game that is coming on Saturday. Excuse me. It's coming on Saturday night, and that'll be the game in Dallas at Jerry World between Oregon, number 11, and then 16th ranked Auburn. That figures to be the best game of the day. And going into that game, Auburn, I believe, is about they're a 3.5 point favorite. And that's the game that's going to be hard to pick. Auburn comes in, they've got a really strong defense. They should have one of the best defenses in the country. Oregon comes in with one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Justin Herbert. Personally, I think overall, and considering Auburn's quarterback situation, who is coming in and starting a true freshman at quarterback, playing his first game in front of what's going to be probably 70,000+ people in one of the most famous stadiums in America on national television, you have to wonder how well he's going to do and be able to adapt in that kind of environment. I'm picking Oregon, even though as far as the point spread goes, it's considered an upset. Oregon is a higher ranked team. I think overall, he's probably a little bit more of an experienced team, and I think that they're going to pull out the win on that one.
I definitely see that as well, because not only do they have that quarterback situation there, but they also have a situation where in training camp they had a lot more quarterbacks than they do now. They also had a starter that they presume to be the starter back then that is not there now. So what they're looking at now is a situation where this quarterback's not like Tua going into this year. He's not like Jake Fromm going into this year. He's a quarterback now that has no idea, how to compete in front of all these people. Regardless, he might have seen some of that in high school, but definitely not on this scale. But yeah, how to compete in front of all these people, how to perform under those lights, how to perform against a top team. Oregon, not currently, but in the past, Oregon's definitely a top team, a top program, I should say. And that's going to be a little bit hard for somebody leading an offense such as Auburn's to kind of go up against Oregon. Not even to mention, regardless of if they have, I don't know if they're thinking forward, but all the teams that Auburn has to play on their schedule this year, we might be looking at a quarterback that's a little shaken up already. So, I'll probably give it to Oregon there. Probably by their point differential, maybe a touchdown instead of a field goal. Though I would say I'd probably give it to Oregon from a touchdown instead of a field goal. I think it's going to be a little bit farther. I think probably Auburn's probably going to make a couple mistakes, like we saw Jaron Williams do. Even though Jaron Williams looked pretty good there for a freshman, he still made a little mistake here and there. I think it's going to be the same thing for Auburn here, and Oregon, obviously being in the past a decent program, they're going to capitalize off that, and they're probably going to get the win.
Yeah, I think so too. But it'll be a good game. That game should go down probably till late in the fourth quarter. And you got some other games, involving, top ranked teams, but most of these games again are going to be mismatches. You got Lane Kiffin's team for Atlantic playing at Ohio State. Ohio State should win that one big. You've also got Duke playing at Alabama actually in Atlanta in a Mercedes-Benz Dome. Alabama's about 35-point favorite. Duke has lost a good bit from last season. Of course, they had Daniel Jones drafted first round by the Giants, their quarterback, so that's a huge loss for them. But Alabama should win that game easily. Got some other interesting games. You got Northwestern, a team that some people are picking to be a little bit of a surprise or sleeper out of the Big Ten, traveling west to play Stanford in Palo Alto. Stanford starting the season ranked number 25. That could be a good game. I would not be surprised to see Northwestern win that. So that will be one to keep an eye on. And then looking at the SEC, you got a couple of interesting games being played involving teams out of the SEC. One is you got an actual conference game being played on the first weekend, which is unusual in the SEC. But you got Georgia, which is number 3, playing at Vanderbilt, which means that Georgia, like other teams with large followings do, will probably fill up at least half that stadium with their own fans. They buy up tickets at Vanderbilt, the Vanderbilt school, and their fans sell off to Georgia fans who are probably be more than happy to take those off the Commodores fans' hands. But they should have a large following there. And Vanderbilt's got, they got a couple of decent players in offense. Keyshawn Vaughn, running back. They got a tight end whose name escapes me at the moment, but was voted all-conference SEC preseason. I think they've got a pretty decent defense, but Georgia is pretty solid all the way across the board. They got one of the best quarterbacks in football in Jake Fromm. Also one of the best running backs, DeAndre Swift. They'll have one of the best, if not the best, offensive lines going into the season. Defense should be solid across the board. This is an area to worry about with Georgia. It's going to be the receivers and a lot of guys who have talent but don't have a lot of experience. So that'll be something to watch. But I think Georgia will win that game easily.
I think Vanderbilt's going to be a good place to have Jake Fromm show how he's going to get to these receivers and how the receivers are going to do. Because we all know Vanderbilt's not looking like DBU right now. So their corners are going to have a little bit of trouble keeping up with some SEC wide receivers, even though these guys aren't top of the line. So I think we'll see a lot of, open passes and probably a lot of open routes and things like that, and probably a lot of passing, even though Georgia's going to want to chew clock, run the ball on a team that they know they can run the ball on. But you are going to see a decent bit of passing because it is Jake Fromm. He's a gunslinger. He knows how to pass. So I think this is a really good place to see how Jake Fromm can operate without top tier wide receivers. So I'm really excited to see that. That's a game worth watching. Definitely, if you're an SEC fan. See if Jake Fromm can carve up Vanderbilt without those top tier wide receivers. I'm looking forward to that. That's gonna be cool.
Yeah, that's going to be it's a good matchup to watch there. One other game I want to mention too, also involving an SEC team, is Ole Miss. Ole Miss is actually opening the season at Memphis in the Liberty Bowl. And Memphis has one of the better coaches, particularly in the group of five, in Mike Norvell. Last 2 or 3 years, he's been constantly mentioned with some other big-time jobs when they come open. He stayed at Memphis. Memphis actually goes into this game as the favorite. They're about a 5.5-point favorite to kick off. But I'm thinking that Ole Miss is probably going to end up pulling the upset here, the so-called upset. I think they're going to be better than they've been the last couple of years. Ole Miss has a new offensive and a new defensive coordinator, which they badly needed. Their defense has been really bad the last couple of seasons, and I think they're going to surprise some folks. I would expect Ole Miss to win this game. I think it'll be close, but I think that they're plenty good enough to pull off a victory here.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that as well. I think when you're talking. I think you're all right. I think we have some technical difficulties there. I don't know why the mic kind of cut out for a second. Anyways, I think when you have an SEC team pit up against anybody, we would like to look at the SEC and see an upset pulled or something like that. But I think here is where you're really going to see one. Last year Ole Miss was known for its pretty stocky and pretty explosive wide receivers. This year they don't really have that. But they do have the experience that they need on a lot of those positions on the offense. In the wide receiver core, you have guys that were mentored by DK Metcalf, who's probably going to go on to the NFL and do some really great things. Mm-hmm. You have an offensive line who's not, the best of the best, but they're definitely experienced in some parts of that line. And defensively, I don't really know much about some of those defenders. I know last year the DBs at Ole Miss were kind of able to keep up with some of the top tier SEC teams. I think a big problem for them is definitely going to be the run game. So yeah, I could see that upset being pulled. That's just going to have to be a game I'm going to have to watch from the get-go, though, definitely. But yeah, I could see an upset being pulled there. I could see a lot of defensive scoring maybe in that type of game, a lot of defensive plays. So yeah, that's definitely something to look forward to.
Yeah. And you got some good matchups as well. We won't dive into them deep because we have some other things we want to cover as well. But there are a few other what I would call interesting games. For one, you do have Mississippi State, who's actually interesting enough is opening the season in the Superdome in New Orleans, playing against Louisiana Lafayette. I think Mississippi State wins that game.
Oh yeah,
they're really the better team, but to open the season there on the road against a team like that, that's an interesting game.
Well, it's one of the toughest stadiums to play at in the nation, but they're not playing anybody that really,
right.
A huge fan base.
But that's an interesting note. Also, another game I mentioned, or I failed to mention, I should say, in the SEC is actually South Carolina. Opening the season playing in Charlotte against North Carolina. North Carolina actually is starting a true freshman quarterback. Of course, Mack Brown just returning there as the head coach. North Carolina's been down the last couple of years. South Carolina is going to be anxious to get off to a good start. Will Muschamp, one of the coaches, starting the season on the hot seat. Even though they got one of the toughest schedules in the country. People feel like if he doesn't have a good year, he could possibly be on his way out. So I think it's going to be really crucial that the Gamecocks get off to a good start. I think they win this game. I think they're clearly the better team. They're a more experienced team. They've got a senior quarterback in Jake Bentley, who when he's good, he's pretty good. Although he's been kind of up and down in his career, but I think South Carolina will pull that one out.
And one thing I know about South Carolina as well, on that wide receiver core, they actually have Deion Sanders' son as a true freshman wide receiver. Shiloh Sanders, I believe is his name. So that's something cool about South Carolina there. Deion's son, see how he does. I'm pretty sure he's going to be playing in that game. So yeah, that's just a little fact to throw in there.
And then also we got a couple of games involving ACC teams. We got a game actually is going to be played in Jacksonville Saturday night. That'll be Boise State playing at Florida State or against Florida State in Jacksonville. James Blackman was just recently named this week as a starter. Of course, he has been previously a starter, not last season, but the season before last when DeAndre Francois was hurt. But, of course, last year he didn't play much as DeAndre Francois came back from his injury and was the primary starter last year. But this year it's going to be James Blackman's job again. And, of course, Boise State, not quite as good as they've been in past years, but still a pretty solid football team.
That should be a decent test for Taggart's second year of coming through and trying to pull Florida State out of the ashes and kind of revive some of that national championship vibes that they had not many years back.
Yeah, so. I don't have a lot of confidence right now in Willie Taggart and Florida State.
Me neither,
I need to see some improvement before I start having some confidence in their ability and see some things I need to see before I think that they're actually on the way to improving and maybe getting back to what they what we would usually expect to see from a Florida State team.
I do like Florida State, and they have a really great program. It's a program that I love to keep up with. But last year with Taggart's introduction, from the get-go, I was against his coaching style and his methods, and even fans booing Taggart. That's a sign that they didn't. I don't think they hired the right guy. I don't think this guy was somebody they should keep. And if I was an FSU fan, I mean, I know a lot of those guys got mad, at Taggart and all those things. They didn't want somebody like that coaching their team, but I feel like this is the year he can step up. If not, then they're gonna have to go another route definitely because Taggart's got to really bring FSU back a little bit this year.
If he doesn't show significant improvement, he could be on the hot seat also. Even though it's just his second year, I think they underperformed so badly his first year that I think he's really got to show some improvement.
They do have to get some top tier wins this year to kind of bring that back.
But I think Boise State actually wins that game, though.
You do? You say Boise State?
I think they got a better coaching staff, and I think they just simply have a better team. So I would expect that. But
because of the quarterback situation, I'm not sure. I'm really torn. But because of the quarterback situation, yeah, I might give it to Boise State because of the fact that FSU won't have a dedicated passer to kind of get receivers the ball. Somebody that's been out. Year.
But that's kind of how a lot of the games on Saturday, at least the ones that we think will be the most interesting. Of course, you have a full slate of games, so there's a lot of good games on TV to watch and follow. And then we have a couple other games that'll be highlighted this coming weekend as well. Sunday, actually Sunday evening, we had. Since the NFL hasn't kicked off yet, you had kind of an expanded slate of college games the first weekend since they don't have to compete with the NFL yet. But on Sunday evening, we actually got an interesting game, a game I'm looking forward to seeing, and that's Houston playing at Oklahoma. Oklahoma, of course, starting ranked number 4 to begin the season. A lot has been made about Jalen Hurts, the transfer from Alabama, being named their starting quarterback, taking over for the last 2 quarterbacks who both won Heisman trophies the last 2 seasons. He's got some big shoes to follow in, but he is used to He's a very experienced guy. Used to be on the big stage. Used to playing in big games. So um, he should fit in there very well. I think he'll do well. Um, I think that's going to be an exciting game. I think you'll see a lot of big plays on offense, a lot of points scored. I think Oklahoma wins. Actually, Oklahoma is one of my picks to make the college football playoffs. So I'm looking, for them to have a big year, and I think I think that'll be a good game to keep an eye on.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts is probably going to be in that game for probably a half, but I think he's going to tear it up. He's definitely going to be, beasting in that game. And honestly, if you want to know the truth, I think he has a pretty good shot to be the third Oklahoma guy in a year, in 3 years, to win a Heisman. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens there. But if there's anybody here that could, fill those shoes, it's definitely Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is a dude that can take off and run when he needs to, and we saw in the SEC championship game that his passing has improved to the point where it needs to be, and it's probably improved even more being there at Oklahoma in a system where you have to be able to pass your receivers and things like that. Obviously, it's probably a little bit different now with Jalen Hurts at quarterback, but definitely I think he's going to be able to carve that team up, and I'm really excited to see that, just to see how Jalen's looking now.
Yeah, and of course how much he plays a game is going to depend on how much Oklahoma's defense has improved. Of course, they hired away Alex Grinch from Ohio State, who was the defensive coordinator there. And, of course, any improvement in Oklahoma's defense would be an improvement because they were one of the very worst defensive teams in all of college football last year. And I'm sure Lincoln Riley would love to not have to outscore every single opponent that he plays this year. So if they can, even if they don't have a great defense, if they just have a decent defense, I don't see anybody beating Oklahoma. Because other than Texas, and maybe outside of somebody like an Oklahoma State or Iowa State, I don't see anybody really seriously challenging them out of the Big 12 this year.
Definitely. If Jalen Hurts stays where he needs to be, stays healthy and everything, and carries that team, I definitely think they can, go all the way and make it to the playoff. Very exciting to see Oklahoma. Almost exciting as, watching Alabama or Clemson or Georgia this year. Definitely really exciting for Oklahoma. So, yeah, all right. So I guess that kind of moves us away from college football. Covered everything there. With the amount of time we have left, it's pretty perfect because we do have a couple stories that we have to cover. And I forgot. I don't know why we didn't cover this first, but the biggest news of this week, probably the biggest news of the century for NFL football, is Andrew Luck retires from the NFL. He did that on Saturday, I believe it was during that game.
Miami-Florida game, yeah.
So, people made a joke like maybe Andrew Luck retired to get people's attention taken away from this boring game. But, yeah, I think that was a big thing that everybody was kind of mad about in Indianapolis. And granted, that was a quarterback that was, pretty crazy. In his NFL career. This is a guy that we were going to see as the future of the NFL, a guy that came in 2012 as the number 1 overall pick from Stanford, and he was going to be insane. He was going to be, some people call him the new Brady, a guy that could lead a dynasty, Aaron Rodgers type quarterback that could do it all. And we just really love seeing him play. One of the best quarterbacks we've seen in a while. So it was really shocking to every NFL fan when he retired on Saturday night. And I think when you look at it, it really comes down to injuries. If you're not familiar with the NFL, if you don't watch a lot of NFL football, and you're not familiar with Andrew Luck in general, the biggest thing about Andrew Luck is that he's almost never able to play a complete season. Always injured, always has some kind of injury. That's not his fault, really. That could be chopped up to the O-line or just just coincidence of the defense that he plays against. But he's always had a problem with his health. He's never been able to, finish a whole season, really, and kind of get out there and get to the playoff and get after it, except for this past year. And then in training camp, he had another injury this year. So it makes perfect sense to me why he would come out and retire. A lot of people are, kind of criticizing him for doing it so late. In my opinion, I don't see anything wrong with that. When you get paid, millions of dollars to throw a football and, you're putting your life on the line to play, and you're playing a sport where you're an absolute warrior and you're getting paid that much money and you're a rock star. Like seriously, you don't have to answer to anybody about anything, in that situation, especially when you lead a team like that and you bring a whole city together like Andrew Luck did. He was one of the greatest gifts to Indianapolis ever, and I think he needs to be praised for what he did in his time there. I definitely think it's a shocking retirement and a what could have been thing. It's very sad to see him leave, but like I said, the NFL is not for. It's not something that you want to grind against. If you feel that it's your time to go, obviously we've seen in the past that it should be your time to go. He's had a lot of injuries. Don't want to see anything more terrible happen to Andrew Luck. So that's his decision, and honestly, it was a good call for the health problems he's been put through.
Yeah.
So no criticism to him there.
Yeah, and that's something you just see more of nowadays with the NFL being a lot more safety conscious nowadays with the way they referee the game, with some of the rule changes we've seen. Of course, we had the big ordeal with AB and the helmet issue, and again, that all stems from the NFL trying to make the game safer for players. As much as you possibly can. I mean, football is a violent sport, is a collision sport. And you're going to have injuries. But it's sad to see. Andrew Luck was one player I always liked watching. Thought he was one of the better quarterbacks around. Of course, he's had persistent health issues ever since he's been in the league. And I guess after a while that can take its toll mentally on anybody, regardless of who you are. Of course, for the Colts, it couldn't have come at a worse time. It would have been better if he had made this decision, maybe back in the spring or something. They could have prepared for it. But
if there's going to be any reasonable criticism against Luck, it would be that. It would just be the fact that he waited so long. And it's not a bad thing. Like, nobody's saying, oh, you should have waited that long, you're a terrible person. It's like, no, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I applaud you 100% for, doing the unthinkable and retiring, against, the say of all. But I think it would have been better before, but you got to do what you got to do and make that decision. I understand it's a hard decision. Everybody in the NFL loves what they do, or else they wouldn't be there. Obviously, he loved to play football. He loves the game of football. Maybe it just opens up the door to other things. His father is a new commissioner of the XFL, right? Or is he a commissioner or just CEO or something? I don't even know. One of those. He's a very
I forget
high
his
rank.
exact title. Is either CEO or commissioner or something to that effect, maybe both.
Well, he's got a very high rank in the XFL, so maybe we'll see Andrew Luck joining the ranks of the XFL or something, doing some kind of job there, maybe some kind of analyst type thing or something like that. Definitely want to see more of Andrew Luck in the future. Obviously not on the football field, but just in general, great person, great guy. Everybody applauded Andrew Luck, and sometimes we made fun of him for just the way that he kind of carried himself on the field. When he would get sacked, he would say, great hit, buddy, like, great job. And then, last year when they asked him how does it feel to be in the playoffs, he said, man, this is stinking awesome. So, he's a great guy. He's a really fun dude to watch. Yeah. Wish the best for Andrew Luck. That was a terrible situation, with all those injuries, and I understand why he would retire. And for the fact for Indianapolis fans to boo him out of the stadium is ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. Even all kinds of players were giving their condolences and stuff and saying, like, good job, applaud them and stuff for making that decision. But I think one thing that was pretty crazy that we never opened our eyes up to was Gronk was asked about that the other day, asked about his injuries and talking about maybe coming out of retirement, and he said on the night that they won Super Bowl 53 against the Rams. He said that night was so bad for him and he was crying the entire night. He had a liter of blood drained from his thigh or his calf. The pain was so bad that he cried all night. The night he won the Super Bowl. So that's how bad of a toll it can take on an NFL player. So we all need to remember that when we criticize Andrew Luck for leaving like that. Definitely all my best to Andrew Luck. That was a terrible situation that he was in with all those injuries. So yeah. Well, some breaking news that actually came in through the middle of this podcast. The NFL will actually now be allowing players to wear lightly tinted visors on their helmets. I think it will come standard with all the helmets, and it came with a deal with Oakley, like Oakley sunglasses. It will come with a deal to put these visors on the helmets. So that's pretty cool. A lot of people like seeing visors in the NFL. They weren't allowed to wear them before. Or it had to be like a very clear one or something like that. But now they can wear tinted visors, so you might see the Cardinals wearing like a red tint, Packers wearing like a yellow or green tint. So that's pretty cool. Something I'm, very looking forward to seeing is that because I love when, teams do uniform changes and things like that and seeing new changes in the uniforms. With the color rushes, those could look pretty sick, even though they don't do color rush anymore. But
those will look cool, and it's not only that; it's a good safety measure. It keeps guys from getting poked in the eyes from our players.
Yeah, with face masks and stuff.
And so I mean, it's a good thing for them to be doing all the way around.
Keeps the sun out of your eyes too if you're an offensive guy and you're a punt returner, things like that. Keeps the sun out when you're trying to see the ball. Quarterbacks especially.
Helps quarterbacks. Defense backs can't read his eyes, see where he might be trying to go with the ball.
Exactly. Wide receivers, when they turn around, trying to see the ball when it comes through on deep routes and things like that. So all in all, it's a good thing. I think they'll have the option to take it off, but I think what I read here is that it'll come standard on helmets, and they'll be applying it soon. They better hurry because season starts soon. But I'm sure they've already been working on that before they announced it. But
sure.
But yeah, that's gonna be really cool to see. That was, like I said, it was breaking news, just came through, so I thought I'd mention it. So I guess one more little story before we end it off here. Probably the tiniest story of the week was Jadeveon Clowney, the Texans' second best edge rusher behind J.J. Watt, is probably he's looking to be traded currently. The league is anticipating a trade for him. And the Dolphins are apparently very close to getting a deal done, but here's the catch, which we've seen multiple times before. Not recently, but here's the catch. Clowney does not want to go to the Dolphins, reportedly. He wants to go to either the Eagles or the Seahawks. The staff wants to trade him to the Dolphins, but he will refuse to sign his franchise tag, or he will sign his franchise tag if he doesn't want to sign over there. So we'll see what happens with that. Clowney is a really good player, one of the best edge rushers in the league. So being on the Dolphins, he could really help them out with a team that really has no spectacular defense. I mean, they don't have anybody now that can kind of go off and say, I'm the best defender in the league at whatever position they are. So I think definitely he would be a big help over there, but obviously he doesn't want to go over there. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, I mean, if you think he want to be a contender, he would stay where he is and sign as franchise tender. Of course, a lot of these NFL guys always think that the grass is greener somewhere else. They think they're going to get more money going somewhere else. Sometimes that's the case. Sometimes it isn't. Of course, if he goes to the Dolphins, he will not be in the playoffs this year. I don't think that trade's going to happen because apparently the Texans are wanting the Dolphins' offensive tackle Laramie Tunsil in return, and supposedly the Dolphins are not offering Tunsil as part of any prospective trade for Clowney. So
that deal probably won't go through.
So unless they change that and maybe trade him for a high pick like a first round pick or something, that's probably not going to happen. If Clowney does end up getting traded, it will probably be to somebody else.
Well, if they want Tua, they better not trade the 2020. I'll tell you right now. Like Miami needs Tua, and Tua does not want to go to Indianapolis. I can tell you that. I don't think any player really wants to go to Indianapolis. So yeah. Hope Miami doesn't trade that pick away. That would suck. But in reality, it doesn't look like a trade's going to go through. Seahawks aren't going to trade them anything. The Eagles aren't going to trade them anything, from what I can see. So he'll probably end up sticking around unless he really, really wants to leave. Then he'll end up going.
Unless he wants to pull a Le'Veon Bell. So
yeah, he'll end up going somewhere if he really wants to leave. But yeah, a thing you're seeing a lot in the NFL now. But Jadeveon Clowney that's the thing about him is that he's a great edge rusher, probably one of the best in the league. I guess top 10, but he's not like top 3 or top 5. I would say. I mean, I could think of probably 5 better edge rushers than he.
Well, yeah, I mean, injuries have been an issue for him.
Exactly. Yeah.
He has been to 3 straight Pro Bowls. I know he missed a lot of games his first 2 years. He has been healthier the last 3 seasons he's played. Although he has missed a game here and there, so injuries are always a concern with him. So I guess we'll just have to see how that goes.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. I mean, also, at the same time, I'm kind of putting him as an edge rusher here, but he's also a linebacker. In reality, he's like a Khalil Mack type guy. He's also a right linebacker, so we have to look at that as well when we look at Clowney and where he might go. Who needs a linebacker? Who plays a 3-4 type defense that might need somebody that can get on the edge and do those kind of blitzes? Yeah, we'll see something like that in the future. He'll probably end up going somewhere different. But yeah, so I guess that was it for the football forecast today. Usually we do a lot of like ending off stuff, but I think today we're just kind of going to end it off. And yeah, so before we go, I'm just to let you guys know we stream every single Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Next week we're going to be talking about the games on Saturday, and we're really looking forward to all those games. So make sure you tune in next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Go ahead and share this podcast around with all your friends, family, anybody that likes football. Go ahead and follow our Instagram page at Your Football Forecast. And yeah, I think that's about it, unless you have anything to add before we go.
No, I think that's about it.
All right. So thank you guys for tuning in. Next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you there. Thank you. See you guys next week.